We will come to Everton in quite some depth in just a second. First, though, on Burnley. First time they've been ahead, then gone behind, then come back to win this season. First time in the previous 4 games, they'd lost all of them and they hadn't even scored in them. They then get this win by 3-2 to go to within a point of Everton, and suddenly the door opens for Burnley, and not just for Burnley, all the teams around them. Yeah,
what they've done by winning that game is, as you said, they're just dragging Everton right into it. But I don't know why we're surprised, because we seem to see it all the time with Sean Dyche and this Burnley side, that every time you think this could be the season they go down, the last few games of the season they manage to produce performances which ultimately saves them. But again, as you said there, I mean, hadn't won a game in a long time, but to score 3 at home as well. Finally get to say Maxwell Cornet, who started off the season for Burnley incredibly well, he gets his goal, worked incredibly hard. They had to find a different way yesterday of winning, and they managed to do that. And there were some real standout performances. But as I said, when you look at Burnley as a team, every single one of their players knows exactly what they're doing. They're willing to fight for the cause. And you'd have to say, probably at the bottom of the table, they're the one team that probably would hold their nerve more than the others, because they've been there before and done it. So really good performance from them. I'm sure the 2 goals conceded, which I thought were harsh, some of the decisions. But Burnley, again, getting a result, massive. And as you said there, just drawing Everton back into it. And now it's game on.
The fact that when players come to Burnley, they know that there's a chance they're going to be in a relegation battle, at least at some stage in the season. Hasn't been the case every season for Burnley, but it has been often the case that they're fighting relegation. Does that give them an advantage when they really are in a relegation battle?
I would say it gives them more the experience. I think, especially with a manager like Sean Dyche and the way he has Burnley playing to start with, that it's always high energy. They always work hard. And when you're down in and around that relegation zone area, that is the key thing that's going to literally get you out of it. You can have as much quality as you want, but when you're in there, if you can play well for the first 10 minutes, because I've been there with City, you're playing well and you think everything's good, then they go down the other end and score, then your head just drops. So I think the way he had them come back, shown that his men are ready for this fight, basically, and at no cost are they going to give up this fight. And I think a lot of the other teams are starting to feel like that as well. And now that Everton's got the biggest target on the back, that's who everybody's aiming at.
When those 2 teams are in for training, the next morning after a result like that, there's going to be very different atmospheres, very different kind of perceptions of how the fight is, even if, as Frank Lampard kept saying, we're still above them in the table.
Yeah, I mean, that type of result and defeat, and in the manner in which it came, it's like a punch in the stomach. It takes all the wind out your sails, because they'll be going in today and Frank Lampard will be analysing what's going on. He won't be able to believe that they've lost that game. Whereas a Sean Dyche, and I agree with what Wrighty was saying, there's something that he said there. I think Sean Dyche with this Burnley team, when you're in that relegation battle, performance goes out the window. Like, performances go out the window. So I think Sean Dyche and Burnley, they don't necessarily have to play well to win games. And I think that's going to stand them in good stead going towards the end of the season, because we've seen teams down there, Everton, trying to play good stuff. Watford, to a certain extent, Leeds. But with Burnley, I don't think they necessarily care how they play, as long as they get the results. And when you're down to the last 9 games of the season, it's about just getting the results. It doesn't matter if you touch the ball, if you get 30% possession. If you win the game, that's the most important thing. And Burnley did that last night. And that's why I think this morning they'll be thinking, you know what, there's a real opportunity now for us to get out of this bottom 3.
And you can see that Sean Dyche senses weakness in opponents, and particularly those around them, and not just in the game, but in terms of the relegation battle as well.
Yeah, and as the guys have said, I mean, he's got course and distance, hasn't he? I mean, he's been there before, and I quite like the fact he didn't celebrate the goal. You know, he was just like, you know, we're in control of the situation. We're focused on what we're doing here. So I think he is obviously clearly their greatest asset. And the fact that he has stayed very, very calm throughout this whole season, actually. He's been very even about the whole season. He said it, obviously, a couple of days ago, the guys just scored some goals, and they've scored 3 at home, so that helps. But no, I think absolutely he will sense the weakness in the opposition. I kind of sensed, when Roy Hodgson went to Watford, I thought that gives them a chance, because we know what he can do and he can get them out of it. And I still wouldn't write them off, by the way. But you look at it at the moment, and you'd think that Burnley obviously are the favourites to get out of it. And Everton, I think Everton are going down. As things stand, I think they're going down, because their run as well is horrendous.
You know when you look at the bottom of the table as well, and you look at, I think we'd probably agree that Norwich are going, but I think Burnley, out of all the teams at the bottom 4 downwards, they've got the best characters in their squad to get out of this situation. You look at the likes of Everton, Leeds, I think they've got the best squad to get out of it.
Yeah, it's really interesting when they did the post-match interviews that Jay Rodriguez came out with Maxwell Cornet, who's still learning English, but was there and was willing to be part of it. It's easy if you've scored the winning goal. goal in a big game. But he came out to do that. And like you said, you know, with Sean Dyche's comments about Everton saying this is a team that don't win games, which is what he said to his team at half-time. That's worrying for Everton when you look particularly at the games that they have between now and the end of the season. Look, it's not necessarily straightforward for Burnley. There's a couple of tricky fixtures in there. Does Everton's fixture list concern you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, certainly the next 4, because you start thinking, when do they start picking up any points? But I guess when you're in a...
Say the next 4 and then you go, it's Leicester again. After
yeah,
that.
but I mean...
and then you go, well, it's Watford who might be fighting for a place in the league. And I
get, but when you think about the initial 4, it's where do they trying to build up momentum? But I guess when your back's against the wall and you're obviously swinging for survival, maybe these are the games that you come out and you maybe nick a point here or nick a point there. I mean, it's going to be incredibly difficult. I fully understand that, but they're expected to lose that game, so that might just take a little bit of pressure, because all the other teams in and around them are going to be saying, well, they're not going to win a game there, they're not going to win a game there, and that's maybe where you can use it to your advantage.
It's one of those, though, is every time I've seen Everton play against a City or a Chelsea, or they play better. It's when they play against the teams in and around them and the middle of the table, they seem to make silly mistakes and let themselves down effectively. So I don't necessarily see them having a problem with getting up to run around against Man United, whereas the rest of the teams I do. But I think they could cause an upset against Man United, and I don't think Everton are playing that well, but I just think it's the type of game to motivate Everton's players and kick them into a position and say, look, we've got to wake up here.
Yeah.
You're either playing to stay at the club or you're playing to put yourself in the window in case you go down. There's no better stage to do it on than against the Man United team.
Yeah, we'll look at that game specifically in just a second. But even you look at the fixtures as a whole, the point still holds. Is that Everton have had a draw against Chelsea, and they should really have drawn against Manchester City, bar that handball decision that PGMOL had to apologise for.
Draw against Chelsea was a while ago, though, wasn't it?
It was a while ago, yes. It was Christmas. yeah.
I think you're clutching this.
But the point I'm trying to make is that the better, as Sean says, the better performances have been against better teams.
No, sure, but now they're just playing. Now they're playing a bunch of better teams.
Yeah.
It's one game after the other, and that's what I think is you can't lose that game last night. You just cannot lose that game. And I just think the deflation after that game is so great, and the anger, from what I understand, around the club. I think it was a very, very angry atmosphere around the dressing room last night. I think there's an awful lot of finger pointing going on now at Everton. And I think a lot of the guys know far more about this than me, but my experience of these situations, sometimes that the danger with this is that people start looking after themselves and thinking, right, I'm going to look after myself here. I'm going to think about my own future. And are they pulling together anymore? And you talk about players possibly thinking, well, I might leave. And actually, this sounds a bit cynical, but maybe some of them might think, if we do go down, I got more of a chance to leave than if we stay up. There's more chance of me getting out of this situation and leaving. I'm not saying that anyone wants to get relegated, but
that can work in the subconscious as well.
Yeah, exactly. In your CV, I think, and I do, having spoken to players in the past, I think there is an element of like, I'm going to look after myself here. I'm going to look after myself. This team isn't. I'm part of this team, but I don't want to be part of this team. Yeah. And I wonder if that's going to be going on a lot at the moment with the guys.
Yeah, I think so. You're right there about the finger pointing. I think a lot of that will be going on where people start to hide, then look after themselves, and that's why I just said about you look at the Burnley squad. I just don't see that in their squad. I don't think Sean Dyche allows him to do that. And when I look at who's up for the fight, you look at Watford. I think a handful of their players is probably looking at the likes of Emmanuel Dennis, Ismail Assar. He's wanted to leave Watford for a little while now. So you start looking at their 2 best players, maybe want to go. You then go to Everton, Richarlison, Calvert-Lewin's been linked to Arsenal. I look at Burnley and this Sean Dyche squad. I think they're up for the challenge, and I think none of them have really got that kind of attitude that, well, I'm better than this squad. I think they're all in it together, and that might just see them over the line.
Yeah,
it's one of those. We did a show before, if you remember, Kelly, last week, and Damari Gray, he did an interview, and he was meant to be looking like he's fighting, and me, Dad, and Kelly we all said to each other, he doesn't look like he's confident in survival. And then you watch them play against Burnley, and this is exactly a carbon copy of how he acted. Yeah. Like there's no fight in them. And to get out of a relegation battle, you have to have 11 players swimming in the same direction. You can't have people diverting to different places. You all have to know, this is my job, and let me just do the basics well, and then there's a chance for us, and then we can try and mess with the quality and the tricks and looking nice after.
But it's easy for us to sit here and say they need to find fight. They need to find the kind of grit to grind out results, whatever they play like from now to the end of the season. When you're in it, how hard is it to get the energy to do that, to swim against the tide, to kind of get over that hurdle?
It's so hard. No, honestly, like you said, it is easy for us sitting there doing it, but when you've been into it, been in the situation, it's so depressing. Like the things that keep you going are like the fans are key. I think they have to play a massive part. Even though they're not happy with certain things, they can't turn, because if they turn, that just makes the players go even more into that shell. Whereas really you want the players to be like Gordon, where he's just running through brick walls. He's a young kid that's just come through and he's making a statement. And in a way, it's actually a good position for him to come in, because people are seeing a kid come into a team that is struggling and he's doing very, very well in it. So he's a bit freer, but the rest of the senior players, you can see they're kind of hiding. I watched some games, the players are walking around, they're not closing down. And if you see most of, like when Frank was at Chelsea, the players used to press, whereas Everton, you don't see that. And it doesn't help that they've had a few injuries, especially in the midfield area, and a suspension. But in general, they need more.
But I remember when Darren, when you were at Charlton, you got injured, didn't you?
Yeah.
I genuinely think you'd have stayed up if you hadn't got injured. I'm not just saying that to be.
He's just saying that. He's just saying it. He's just saying it.
You were showing real leadership. You were scoring goals. You were leading the line. I think you went to West Ham and won, did you? I can't remember.
Yeah, 4-0, yeah.
That's right. And I think at that point I thought, they're staying up. And then did you get injured after that? I can't remember.
That was my first game back. But
it was your first game back?
That was my first game back after being out for like 3 months. But you're right, our team spirit that season, because we actually got ourselves out of it.
Exactly.
And funnily enough, we went to Everton. And that's what shot us in the foot. We went to Everton, we fought like crazy, we got it back to 1-0, and then we, obviously like Brendan Godfrey did last night, we made mistakes, game after game, end up conceding and we end up going down. But one thing about our dressing room though, our team spirit was good, and that kind of outweighed anything. Talent, everyone was committed, everyone was ready to go for the cause. But as you said there, when you look at the likes of this Everton team, I'm not quite sure all of them are thinking, you know what, we can get out of this together. I think it's almost like, don't look at us. Like I can imagine being in that Everton dressing room and looking at the defenders and going, well, it's not our fault, it's their fault. And the defenders going, well, if you lot score more, then we wouldn't. And that can rip a dressing room apart.
My understanding, an awful lot of that was going on last night.
Yeah, can imagine.
I've had a couple of messages about it already. It wasn't very nice last night afterwards, which in some ways it should be like that, really, because you don't want to just be quiet and walk out the dressing room. But I think it went a bit, my understanding went quite far last night. It was quite bad.
I think in situations like that, especially as individuals, if you make a mistake, you have to own it. That's the only way to stop the finger pointing. You just have to stand up and come in and just be like, sorry, that one's me, guys. That's the only way you're going to keep it together, because if the finger pointing starts happening, then the cliques are formed. Yeah. And then that's when there's a big problem, because you don't know which way they're swinging, basically.
It's really interesting that you mentioned Frank Lampard's role in all of this as well, because he has experience of high pressure situations, and he was saying last night the pressure of being at the bottom of the table is exactly the same. He doesn't look like the pressure is exactly the same of going for titles and trying to avoid relegation as a player, or going for promotion as a manager, trying to get in the playoffs as a manager. It looks like it's taken its toll on him as well. And we mentioned the Damari Gray interview when he was low-key. Frank Lampard, as much as his words are right, his tone, his demeanour looks deflated.
It's a different beast down there compared to up there. When you're up there, it's all smiles. Even though you might lose one, but you're still positive about everything. Whereas that whole team, and like you said, even Frank to a point, their whole demeanours looks like they're already down, effectively. If you see, even when they play, they look like that. Like Richarlison fell on the floor, he looked like he was devastated. But for me, you just have to do more. Everybody, it's not enough just scoring goals. If you defend better collectively as a team, maybe that defender never makes that mistake because the cross doesn't come in. Whereas he had pretty much a free cross. Although he has to do better, you shouldn't be getting a free cross when you're in that situation. There should be people all around him trying to stop him from putting the ball in freely, because you never know what can happen.
It's almost like I mean, I don't know how he says the pressure is the same, because you're talking about people's livelihoods as well at the end of the day, at the bottom of the table. Because relegation leads to all kinds of things, people losing their jobs in and behind the scenes, obviously players having to drop down a level. I think it's completely different. I get it when you're at the top of the table.
Yeah.
It's down at the bottom, and as I said, I've been there where you're absolutely grinding for every single point. And even when you've lost a game against maybe one of your relegation rivals, when you're walking in and around the training ground, the whole atmosphere is just down. It's not a nice place to be, unfortunately. So for him to say the pressure's the exact same, I think it's a little bit.
There are certain things that you feel that he has to say, which is the message he wants to get across. But there is, and we know just from everyday life, running towards something is very different from running away from it, which is a very different feeling. Look, they've got Manchester United this weekend. It's the lunchtime kickoff on the Saturday, which can be chaotic at times. Some of those games can be very flat. Some of those games can be absolute chaos. And at the moment, in very different ways, you feel like we have two clubs with an element of chaos around them in Everton and Manchester United. Now, Burnley, on the other hand, are playing Norwich. You expect they'll be OK at Carrow Road. They'll know the result, obviously, of the Man United game against Everton. I think this is a difficult one to predict. Even if you look at the difference in quality in the two squads, just in terms of the mentality of it, you've got a Manchester United squad where players have been away on international duty. Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire have had, if not directly said, but have implied that it's much easier playing for England than it is to be at their clubs at the moment. Pogba, when he's been on international duty, has clearly been very upset with what's going on at the club. I just feel you've got two clubs in psychologically not great places, is the long-winded way of saying, what do you think's going to happen?
For a start, I think it depends what Man United is going to turn up, to be honest with you. I think if the Man United that we know and we hope should turn up, then for me, no matter how well Everton play, Everton will get turned over. But I think Everton will be so up for the game that they could force the other Man United to turn up. And then in that case, I think Everton could possibly steal something.
Ooh, see, I think I'm with Wright to a certain extent, but I can't see Everton getting anything from this game, because as inconsistent as Manchester United have been, they've just got that star quality on the top end of the pitch. It doesn't really matter if Ronaldo plays and he shows up like he did against Tottenham Hotspur, they win the game. Bruno can turn up, Pogba, Sancho. I think they've got that many players, that real quality that it doesn't really matter what Everton turn up. And the worst thing that could happen to Everton, if they go 1-0 down early, it could be capitulation.
Done,
it could be 5-6s. Yeah. So I just can't see.
And the crowd as well.
Exactly. Because they're the Manchester United crowd, they're going to play their part because they're expecting Manchester United to win. So, yeah, I don't know. I just think I can't see Everton getting anything from this game.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, this one, because you either way, it's going to be, even a draw is going to come away with everybody upset about the result.
Yeah, I mean, Man United are just holding on to that hope of finishing fourth. If they don't win this, it's probably over. So there's, in some ways, you think the desperation is greater with Everton, but it should be just as great with Manchester United. Another factor, obviously, is it looks like we've sorted out the manager now. So, a lot of players will be thinking, right, he's going to be Ten Hag, and how do I fit into that? So you hope they respond to think, well, I want to be part of the future here. But I'm with the guys, it is impossible to predict. We've no idea what type of Manchester United will turn up and what type of Everton will turn up. I mean, Everton could be broken, couldn't they, the way things have gone? And, it could be anything. Man United's record is quite good at Goodison, but I think it's impossible to predict, really, this one.
Yeah. The three significant fixtures, the one we've already talked about, Everton against Manchester United, Watford against Leeds is huge, and Norwich against Burnley, when they've seen both those games, when they know what the results are going to be, is going to be absolutely fascinating, especially to see how Burnley respond to that win against Everton. This could be really significant. It could be more or less done by the end of this weekend, except that we've thought that it was done at various stages this season already.
Yeah, there could be some results. I mean, you look at, there's no guarantees that Burnley can beat Norwich, and Norwich could tie them over. That puts him, I think, 21 points. But then even Watford playing Leeds, the significance of that, if Watford win all of a sudden, they're on the same points as Everton. So, and by then they'll know, because of course Everton are playing first. But it's going to the wire, I think, because there's been so many times I've writ off Norwich, I've writ off Burnley, I've writ off Watford, and every single time I do that, they'll win a game and they're back into it. But I think it's been a reflection of just how poor the teams at the bottom of the Premier League have been. Because usually by this stage, you pretty much know where them 2 are gone, them 3 are gone. So it's pretty much done and dusted. But this season, I couldn't tell you because they're so close and they seem to be picking up results when they need to results. But what's killing them as well is that they win a game and they think, all right. And then the next day, someone else will win who's down there at the bottom as well. So I think, as you said there, after this weekend's results, I think we'll be a little bit clearer as to...
I mean, depends which way they go, because we could end up with everybody within a few points of each other.
But no, I think you'll know, not know maybe 100%, but I think you'd have some kind of indication of who we think could go down.
Yeah, the fact that they're all playing at different times as well, could be factored into it as well.
It'll definitely play in, especially onto the players' heads. It could be in a position where it drives them on to win or vice versa. But I think it's like Darren said. I think when they have had the chances to capitalise and pull away a little bit, that other teams won. But whereas this weekend, it's impossible for that to happen because they're all playing each other. And I actually love it. I love it. Normally, it's just, you're just looking at the top, like he said, and the bottom's already kind of solved itself. But to watch games at the top and the bottom of that magnitude all the way till the end of the season is brilliant.
And it's also one of the reasons it's been so unpredictable, Jason, is because there've been so many underperformances of players at the bottom end of the table, and that's what makes it so difficult to work out what's going to happen over the coming games.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, if you look at Watford Leeds, for example, I mean, I think Watford have to win, obviously, but I've been surprised how poor they've been, really, in terms of the results. Because I mean, look at some of their players, and we've mentioned already, Dennis and Sarr in particular. Obviously, I know he was away for the African Cup of Nations, but I mean, I think he's a terrific player, but he hasn't quite done it for them this season. So I've been surprised at how they've played at times. Then Leeds, obviously, we know the difficulties they had, but then you look at the team, you think, well, they picked up with Jesse Marsh, but underperforming again. So it's across the board, as you say. There have been players big players who haven't performed for those clubs at times, but that's why it's making it so unpredictable. I have a funny feeling, though. I just don't know why. Maybe it's because of Roy Hodgson, but I have a funny feeling Watford still might do it. I don't know why. I just got a funny feeling they might do it.
I think I'm with you with that, because I think when you look at the teams at the bottom, you look at the firepower that Watford have got, the likes of Josh King, Sarr, Dennis, Pedro.
João Pedro.
I think that necessarily, with Roy Hodgson, I thought he'd make them defensively a lot solid. But I think they can score goals, Watford. I know they haven't really done it maybe as much.
They didn't play that bad at Liverpool, did they?
Exactly, they should have. They had chances in that game to win that game, and they didn't take them. So, and even, I just think going forward, I think if they can somehow, in this last mini part of the season, if they can start firing, I think they've got a great chance, I really do.
But 11 home games they've lost this season, Watford, which is... well, the worst in the league, it might not surprise you to know, but it's concerning.
It's very concerning, but I like the way these two have basically just written off Everton, basically.
This is the thing, when you're saying you've got a sneaky feeling for Watford, I'm sort of going, so with Burnley and Everton going there.
I think there might be another twist in the tail with Everton. I was just saying to the guys before, I'm not sure Frank Lampard will survive.
Yeah.
The Everton fans were singing his name last night. There seems to be a sort of... It was at 2-1 up.
Yeah.
Arguably, admittedly, it was at 2-1 up. But there seems to be a feeling that it's maybe not.
No,
his fault
and even if he did go, which I'm not saying he will, but I don't think it necessarily is his fault. But I have a funny feeling, and knowing how they've operated under Fahad Mashiri, that he might just do one more twist and get rid of him and just saying, right, we just got to try and stay up here. Maybe put Duncan Ferguson back in charge, maybe bring in a firefighter for last weekend. And that could be the last sort of twist, I think, in the terms of how it shakes down in the bottom of the table.
It would be absolutely in keeping with the last couple of seasons, wouldn't it, for something like that to happen?
That's partly why I'm thinking it. And also because I was told it was just really, really bad after last night. I think it's calmed down a little bit today, but that makes me think there just might be one more twist that might just turn around and say, we just cannot get relegated, so we're just going to have to do something. And the only thing you can do at this stage is change the manager.
Yeah. And what you don't want to do by the time you change the manager is have it beyond repair.
Yeah.
You don't want to allow this.
So there are still games left, aren't there? And maybe, say, for example, if they do lose on Saturday, they might think, right, that's it, finally, we're just going to have to make the change here. But I don't know, I just have a funny feeling, and a couple of messages I've had thinking that maybe it's not that unlikely that they'll do it again.
Because they've got those 5 difficult games, then they've got a couple of winnable arguably games, and then it's Arsenal on the last day of the season for Everton, isn't it? So
the thing is that you look at the next 4 fixtures that they've got. I mean, they might be quite deep in there by the time, obviously, by the time they get to Leicester again, mate, they could be 3 or 4 points. Depending on results, they could be 3 or 4 points from safety. So I'm guessing if they do make a change, it would have to be maybe relatively soon.
Yeah.
You'd have to think.
be now.
Yeah, because they could come down to that Watford game. Certainly, you want a manager who's had a chance to get his methods in place before that Watford game, because that could be crucial.
I personally don't think that they will change, because I think even if whatever manager you put in, even if it's Duncan or it's Lamps, I think the players.
I like that you specified Duncan Ferguson. Alex isn't going to crack the time. One last chance.
I just don't think anyone can change what they're doing apart from the players.
Do you not think
I said,
somebody can get them better organised defensively?
I don't think it's organisation necessarily. I just think it's lack of confidence and individual errors. I think if you go back over a lot of their games, a lot of them have come from individual mistakes. And I think no manager can change that. It's only the players that can change that mindset.
Right.
And I think until they get that right, they're going to keep losing and dropping points.
What about if a new manager came in there and changed the shape to give them more protection? Because I think back to the Arsenal situation where they were making individual mistakes and Arteta came in and changed up the shape just to give them a little bit more protection. Do you not think maybe someone could do that?
I don't think they have the players to do it. That's the problem. They don't. Half of them are injured. Mina never stays fit. So what do you change it to? You're better off just saying, right, like we said, let's not play the cute, lovely football. Just everybody sit back. We have the pace and we have the strikers to create goals and take chances. So let's play on the break. But then, at least that way you protect yourself instead of trying to play open and expansive. Because you know.
You feel like Everton fans are smart enough to see that happening and not be too upset that the team aren't playing expansive football and losing 4-3, but they've been entertained. They're at the stage of the season now where they understand that results have to come and they understand why that's
the problem is all you three are being rational. Whereas you've got to remember, football club owners aren't rational necessarily, and I just think they might just look at it and think, I've got to change something. I've just got to do it because I cannot. I imagine Farhad Bashir is sitting there thinking, I can't go to the Championship, basically. So that'll be his mindset. It won't be like, okay, these are the mistakes that have been made. Lampard might be the best for us longer term. He's been in the Championship before. It's not unusual for him to be. Obviously, he was at Derby. All of that, we can sit here and think it's not his fault, but I just know football owners, they're just not rational people at times. They'll just say, right, okay, fine, when we cannot go down, I will do something. And it might be anything, it might bring back Sam Allardyce.
But the thing is, there's no guarantees that Frank even gets you out of the Championship if they go down, because he tried with Derby and it didn't work. So that's another decision he'll have to make.
Yeah, and again, there was a sort of similar situation where the club was well funded, but it wasn't necessarily working in the transfer market at times over that spell, and then couldn't quite make it into the playoffs under Frank Lampard. When we talk about the teams that are in trouble, are we saying Norwich are gone, or are we thinking if they can get a win this weekend against Burnley, which you think they might do, if they get a win against Burnley, are they now suddenly possibly staying up?
Well, they're in
we see them getting enough.
Yes, I mean, if they beat Burnley, and to be fair to Norwich, they haven't been playing that badly, I don't think. I think they've been doing okay. I mean, the one performance I could think of was the Manchester United result. I know that was maybe a little while ago, but they did play well in that game. But if they were to go and beat Burnley, and there's no guarantees that they can't go and do that. I mean, Burnley are not on scintillating form. So if they go and win that and they go to 21 points, again, that just draws everyone else back into it. Because a lot of teams are probably looking at Norwich thinking, well, they'll be gone soon. If they can just stay in and around it, there's no reason why they can't stay up.
I think they're going to go down, personally. But I think they're going to cause a lot of problems for other teams along the way, is what I think.
If we're going down, we're taking everybody with
us. I can't see a way out. As well as they have got together and played better under since Dean Smith come, I just don't think they've got enough.
Yeah. So Norwich in the balance, being kind, Norwich in the balance. Watford, you've got a sneaky feeling for Watford, for the Roy Hodgson. This season and the way this looks, but Roy Hodgson is a significant factor. I'm just steady presence.
I'm just influenced so much by covering Fulham many years ago when he did it. I was like, there's no chance he's going to get out of this, and he did. I know we're talking a number of years ago now, but then he did a very, very good job at West Brom, very good job at Crystal Palace, and I just find that there's just something about him that just maybe he might just do it. He hasn't got a relegation in his CV. He's not been relegated before. Yeah. So maybe, I don't know, just one last hurrah from Roy to save Watford.
And then we've got Burnley and Everton, who we've covered quite extensively. Then starting to look further up the table at Leeds United. Now, they look comfortable. They are 6 points away, but they've played 2 games more than Burnley as well. And while there has been an upturn under Jesse Marsch at times, I'm thinking the Wolves game in particular, they've kind of ridden their luck a little bit. There are changes, there are arguably improvements under Jesse Marsch, but enough that they can be comfortable just yet, or do we wait and reassess after the Watford game?
I don't think maybe they're not comfortable, but I don't think they'll go down. Just because I think you're asking the teams at the bottom to start consecutively winning games, which have
they've got their big players coming back.
Exactly. So no, I think Leeds will be okay, and maybe this has been a bit of a wake-up call for them this season, and I expect them to be better next season. But although it's 6 points, I think they'll have more than enough to stay up.
I think the key for Leeds staying up is Bamford. I think if you keep him fit, they'll be fine, because they always seem to play better, especially going forward with him in there, because he chases everything and he causes a lot of problems, and that's what they've missed throughout the season.
And the problem is he keeps having all those setbacks when he's trying to recover from injury. And look, he probably won't make it now to the end of the season, but if they want to avoid getting in this situation again,
they need to
make sure that they're looking ahead for next season as well.
And Phillips, of course.
So
Phillips is coming back, isn't he? So I think he could be just as important, obviously more important because he's going to be fit. But I think they've missed him hugely, so I think he could make a huge difference for them.
Yeah. We've got, somewhere between 7 and 9 games left for the rest of the teams at the bottom of the table. Given that we've got Burnley on 24, Everton on 25 after 29 games, what do we think in terms of how many points it's going to take to stay in the league? It could be quite low. And this is why we can't judge any one defeat too harshly, because the other teams are going to lose a lot of games as well. Yeah. What do you think?
I don't know the points. I have to back my boys.
Out of 27, if there's 27 available at the bottom of the table, that would be 51 for Burnley. We're suggesting that they're not going to quite make that.
No, I think if you can get to 30 points, I think that might be okay. I think because
Leeds already okay then.
I think Leeds will be alright. But you look at for instance Norwich to get to 30. It just seems miles away. But I think 30 will be okay.
It's going to be really tense as we head towards the last few games of the season, and of course it's going to be really tense at the top. Thank you very much to the guys. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.